Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and welcome to the Last Historians interview episode here on the channel. Now, my guest today has been running the History Gal page for just about a year now, and in the main, wanted to share as much as possible her passion for history with the world. She likes to put a special focus on women in history, women who sometimes people have never heard of, but love their stories when they watch her videos. And to her, that is satisfying that someone felt inspired enough by watching to go ahead and do their own research into someone that's piqued their interest. In addition, she's loved the rich tapestry of English history since she was little. Her father was a teacher and was head of history, so she quite literally grew up with it. Awesome. One of her earliest memories was visiting the National Portrait Gallery and seeing the bee pattern portrait of Anne Boleyn, which was truly an amazing moment. History is kept alive for her by visiting historic sites. She is a passionate member of the historic houses and historical royal palaces. She tries and visits as many locations as possible whenever she can. And in her words, you can't beat being able to walk in the footsteps of some of history's most famous people. She lives in the south of England and is very fortunate enough to have a wealth of history on her doorstep. She currently has a 3-month-old daughter immersed in historical worlds by visiting those places with her. And her goal for this year is to complete her debut novel and continue to grow her channel and to tell us more about all of that, her love for history, her upcoming novel in the future, and just more about her. Let's give a huge round of applause to a first timer here on the channel, Elizabeth Goff. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So before we dive into the interview, Elizabeth, is there anything else you'd like to add about your background for the viewers and listeners?
Um, just to say, I'm not a degree historian. I haven't gone up to that level, unfortunately, but I know all I know from studying, reading, academia, fiction books, beautiful history books by really talented uh, historians. So I think if I can get impassioned about it and run a page about it, I think anybody can delve into it and really enjoy it because there's so much more to learn. And you don't have to be, in the upper echelons of academia to have done it. So that's just what I wanted to add, just to preface.
All right, awesome. And speaking of your history page on Instagram as well as your other channels, when was that the moment that you decided that this is something that you want to do, your aha moment?
It was just going to some of these places, then chatting to some of my friends about it and saying, "Oh, I've never heard of that before. Is that a nice place to go and visit to go and see?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, this is amazing. This is just down the road, or this is here, this is there." And I was seeing other pages doing visits and telling stories about people. I thought, actually, well, I can do this. There's only so much my husband can take of me saying, "Oh, did you know that this is where?" So he encouraged me as well to be like, do a page, do talk about it, write about it, tell other people about it. And so I did, and it's such a fantastic little community that everybody has there. And I adore the platform of TikTok. I think it's perfection for doing these short, condensed stories about certain events, certain people, and that's where I've really kind of blossomed, to use a phrase. But that's such an amazing channel to share that on, I found personally.
Nice. And I have to agree, the social media when it comes to like the promotion of history is very, very incredible. From like YouTube shorts to like making like small 1 minute videos about oh this famous person in history or did you know that is really, really fascinating. And
Mm.
I did not really understand like how many historians and like history lovers are on Instagram. I was baffled by the number, which is simply incredible. But it also makes me smile because to me, it's like, see, this is what using social media for like good purposes is like you're spreading the knowledge, you're like teaching history. It's like this to me is just really, really fascinating and just really, really incredible altogether. And I watched some of your posts on Instagram, and I absolutely love it. You do a lot of research, and you are very, very passionate about the content you're making, which I always think that is very important. If you're passionate about what you love doing, it's going to show in the content that you do. And that kind of leads into the beginning questions, Elizabeth. So for you, when you decided to start this page, to start this journey of your life, what was sort of the need or desire you wanted to satisfy viewers who were visiting your TikTok, Instagram, and other channels?
I think it was the fact that history is all around us. It is everywhere you look. Obviously, it depends where you are in the world, but especially in England, the amount of historical sites and places to visit and places to see, people had no idea about. And
Mm-hmm.
to be able to share that and be like, well, this is where such and such happened, or this is, you know, this is here, this is there. And people's minds are blown like, oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't know that. Like, for example, I did a post on the Palace of Nonsuch, which is a
Ooh.
beautiful palace that Henry VIII built. And it was torn down brick by brick. A couple of centuries later, and there's just a park that's left now called the Nonsuch Park. And I did a video about, oh, this is what was actually there. That's why it's called this. And everybody, but people are like, oh my God, I've never heard of this before. And I'm like, well, that is such a cool thing to be able to do. And I'm a huge advocate for women's history. And I always feel it's such a shame that if you have a historical TV show set in the early modern period, it's always going to be Elizabeth I, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII, when in fact there is a plethora of other women and other stories that are just as fascinating, if not more fascinating. And it's such a shame that you don't hear about them, you don't know about them. But when I do these videos and these posts and things, and oh my God, she's so cool, that's so interesting, or that, just to spread their story really. And
Right.
yeah, just to, because they are so worth telling.
That is 100% true. And you actually touched on something that an old guest of mine brought up probably the beginning of this year. She also studies women's history, and she said exactly the same thing that you said, that, when we talk about like the early modern period, especially in England's history, you mentioned like the most famous women in that category with Henry VIII, but there are so many other powerful women in English history, and even going beyond, even going back into English history with why am I blanking on her name? But the mother of Richard Lionheart and John the First of England. I mean, her family line is just incredibly powerful, and knowing her story and what she had to go through to preserve her family, the Plantagenets. I mean, that is incredible, and I 100% agree. So what is sort of like, in addition, your need a desire for your content, but also the promise? What is the promise that you're making when making these posts, these reels, and your content?
um that you will find something of interest, you will find something worthwhile, and you can learn something from these women and their choices they've made, the choices they didn't make, how they made them. um that's, yeah, that's how I would phrase that, I think.
Nice. And leading to the next question. So after you made, starting off on this journey, going back when you start making the few posts on all your socials, what was the initial feedback like? And as a bonus, do you remember if there was ever a comment either on any of your socials that really stuck with you? It's like, oh, this person gets it, or oh, thank you, I'm glad you learned so much about that. Did you ever have that moment in the initial stages of this journey of yours?
Yes, there was one of my earlier posts on Instagram, and I didn't really think anything of it. It was just something that I had posted. I think it was something to do with Anne Boleyn something, and one of a page that I very much admire um, wrote a really in-depth comment back to me, breaking down what I'd said, evaluating what I'd said, not necessarily agreeing with everything that I'd said, but had taken the time to read what I'd done, or felt and thought, and assessed it and given it back in and their thoughts and opinions. And it was a real step back to be like, oh, I'm worth I'm worth taking the time to really assess and analyze what I've been doing. And that was really like, I don't know, say quite humbling. It was such a lovely thing for someone like, oh, someone took the time to understand what I'd wanted to say and given me their thoughts on it. And which sounds like a really silly thing, but it means so much for people to take the time, because it's easy to flick and scroll and buzz
Yes.
over, quick flick, you're done. Oh yeah, that's interesting, like, finished. But to actually have a dialogue, to take the time to take the dialogue with somebody is really fantastic, and that's what like fills your heart with joy and makes you realize that, oh, this is something that's worth carrying on. When you think, oh, I have nothing to say or nothing's really important, you post something, then someone's like, oh, I don't agree with that, but here's my thought. Amazing, like, fantastic, such a cool channel to have that with.
And that's probably the best thing when it comes to like teaching history or like sharing histories, when you can have those very intellectual discussions and conversations where, yes, the person who may comment on a post may not agree with you, but they're able to break it down and say, well, here are my thoughts, here are the things I enjoy, and have like a good conversation. That's the beauty of history, when you can have those conversations. And I'm glad that you've had that and that really stuck with you and like really was like oh, I can do these. I can have these discussions with my followers, with people who like my content, and that's a really, I just said, like a really humbling thing and a really impactful thing. So, would you say in that moment that that sort of validated your promise and everything you've done up to that initial comment?
Yeah, totally, because it makes you think, oh yeah, okay, I do have a voice and it is worth listening to, not just you're chatting into the void of kind of nothingness. Somebody does take the time to be like, oh, okay, I'll respond to that, or I'll take the time out of my day to reply or to say how they feel about it, which is, when everything is so quick and so speedy and everyone's so busy,
Mm-hmm.
it's awesome to have that.
Definitely. And I know the feeling. I love when I have like people like message on like my YouTube episodes and like, oh, this was a great interview, and like at this
Mm.
timestamp that this was a great discussion. It's like I love having those engagements, and it's such a really powerful thing. And especially when it comes to the history content I've done as well, with like talking with people, learning so much about them and just broadening my palette, which then turning over to you, Elizabeth. So in your bio that you sent me and we read at the beginning, that you grew up with history. Your dad was a teacher, and later in life you're also now a member of a famous society, the historical of the Royal Historical Houses and the Royal Palaces, correct? Wonder you could tell a little bit more about sort of that upbringing growing up, as well as being a part of that incredible society.
So, with my dad teaching history, it was inbuilt into me to go to these places, see these things. And as I mentioned, it was going to the National Portrait Gallery, seeing the Anne Boleyn
Mm.
portrait, and I knew who she was, I knew what she meant, and it was probably around six or so. Um, and she was just a fascinating woman to me, a fascinating story. And my dad would tell me these stories. He would give me these hand-me-down history books that I would look at the pictures through, and then I'd read the word, go through like these massive kind of tomes, um, and it was just the stories. It was the people and the stories behind everything, and then it was obviously the, you know, the situations behind all the historical fact and things, but it was
Right.
the stories of the people that really intrigued me. And this queen that was murdered by her husband after he ripped the world apart to be with her, to a young girl, I was like, oh my god, this is like,
The
what is this?
scandal.
Yeah, this scandal, oh my god, you know. And it just, and so as a result, we would, I'd read these books, read about these places, and we'd go and visit them. We'd go and see these places, and we'd go and see where this event was held and that event was held, and it was a regular weekend occurrence. We'd be members of English Heritage, and we'd go and see these sites, and it was just all enveloping. It was all around us. It wasn't, you will go to these things and you will enjoy it. It was just pure love from all of us, and it's just gone on and on from there. So as I've gotten older, I've read more books, I've learned more, you know, at the wider spectrum of history and the background behind everyone and the intrigues behind everything. And like I said before, the greatest thing that you can have is walking in the footsteps of these people.
Hmm.
So I am so fortunate as to where I live. I can go to the Tower of London. I can go to Hampton Court Palace, Leeds Castle, Hever Castle. All of these places are, you know, just so accessible, and you know for a fact that such and such was here at such and such time. You know, the only thing that's separating us from them is time.
Hmm.
It's the same locale, but it's, yeah, it's just living history. That is what it is. If you choose to view it that way. I know some people say, "Oh, history's, you know, dead, dull, boring," you know, all that sort of stuff. But it's everywhere. You know, if you choose to look, it is there.
That is 100% true, and I am extremely jealous that I do not live in the UK or anywhere in Europe, because literally to have that in like literally your backyard and just to walk there's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm just going to go to the Tower of London for a little bit, or I'm just going to go to Windsor Castle, or just going to walk there. It's like that is so incredible. And like it is true, like the architecture in like Europe and England specifically, it's ingrained everywhere. I was reading somewhere or watching a video that in this one neighborhood, there's this monument. It's just in a regular cul-de-sac. It's like it's so out of place to like the modern eye. But if you know the history behind it, you realize the cul-de-sac was built around. I don't remember it, but I imagine that there's probably like those similar architectures in England where they're just there, and to the modern person who's not very astute in history, they'll think, can't they just remove it or just replace it? And I was like, no, it can't. It's always been there. You cannot remove it. You need to
yes,
know the reason behind it. I mean, that is just so fascinating. And going back again to your social media, especially your Instagram, you are very passionate about the content you're making. I see with everything you do, and it's always nice to see that, which leads into a very powerful question, which is, as I'm sure you will agree, Elizabeth, like making content, like social media, writing a book, anything, it's a very long and, not to say it is tiring, but it's a very long and lonely journey, because you're spending hours and hours into research, developing like a script to read about either a place, a piece of architecture, a region, and putting it out there for the digital stage, and not really knowing if it's going to get the feedback you want, or you're going to get feedback, but it's going to be maybe overtly negative or mixed, and that may deflate someone from continuing their passion. And I bring up this question because a lot of people mentioned either writing books or doing history podcasts or like posting history. This leads into this discussion of imposter syndrome, which affects all forms of creators. So, for you, Elizabeth, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome when making your content? And as an add on, how have you disciplined yourself to continue posting your passion, because it is your passion? This is what you love to do, and nothing is going to stop you from doing it.
um, it's it can be difficult when you do get faced, if you put a lot of work and effort into especially doing a video where you, like you say, you write this, you do the research, you write the
Hmm.
script, you get the clips together, you record the audio, edit it all, put it out there. And if it doesn't land in the way that you have thought it would or wanted it to, that can be really frustrating experience, a really humbling experience.
Yes.
And you can see it through other people's perspectives. So you can say, right, I've done this. This is great. Put it out there, and then people say, well, this is really skewered this way or that way, or you've not really thought about this and you've not really done that. And when people don't like something, they are quick to tell you, especially
Yes.
on TikTok. they are ready and willing to go. So I have had a couple of those moments, and some I have been I've agreed with and been okay, right, yeah, no, that wasn't voiced in the way that I was trying to pitch it. It didn't come over, and that's on me. That's my bad. Other times I've been like, no, I am right in this. This is the history. You are choosing to view it a different way. That's fine, but I am sticking with this.
Right.
So I've had kind of two different lanes. I've been, you know, humbled and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't do that quite right, or like, no, this is what it is. So in anything, you just hope for the best when you do produce something, and you kind of I did catch myself trying to alter my content to suit the narrative of TikTok or something like that, to have it was really, it's very hard to explain, but I was trying to alter what I was doing to try and fit
Right.
in and try and make it kind of
Ah,
believable
I see. I see.
and things like that. And everything was coming a bit jumbled, and I wasn't putting my point across. It didn't sound right. So I was like, well, I can only do what I do because I
Right.
am passionate about it and I enjoy it. This is it. And if you don't agree with it, I will listen and weigh it up either way.
And that is actually like very, very true. You actually brought up a really important discussion, which I would like to delve more into later in the interview. So I'm going to save it to that point. But going forward, so in addition to your father, Elizabeth, is there anyone else you would like to shout out who have been like key motivators in your love for history, as well as going forward, producing historical content on social media, fellow podcasters, content creators, and so forth?
Um, for real life people, it would also be my mum. My mum was very firmly on uh women's history, and giving me little known facts about this person or that wife or this queen or whatever. And it was, and being in, because she was a mum, because she'd done all these things, she related and connected to these women in a different way. So, she, about childbearing and things like that, and she'd give me a whole different perspective on stuff like that when I was younger. And whereas my dad was more of like the facts and the history teacher
Ah,
and all this other stuff,
yes.
and she would give the more of the humanist side of like, oh well, this could be this and that could be that. So they were great. They are a great pairing together with anything like that. So they both fueled my passion completely, and all of the trips were done, and we still do them today. We still go off, and I take my daughter with me as well. So it will be the little trio that we have going on.
Nice.
Yes. So, but for historians and things, it's Tracy Borman for me. I think she's fantastic. I love her to pieces. I love her books. I love her work. I love her writing. I love her TV shows. And Lucy Worsley. Gosh, there's just, and Natty Gruninger. There's so many women writing about history now. Whereas when I was growing up, it was David Starkey and Eric Ives, and they're all brilliant writers and historians. But now it's so different that there are so many. Maybe they were around before. I don't mean to say didn't exist before then, but it just seems that there's much more
Right.
of a presence of female historians. And I love reading their works. And I went to a talk that Tracy Borman was giving at Southwark Cathedral. Is Yeah, there's just so many people to be inspired by.
Awesome, awesome. And also, another song I think would be really cool to check into because I've learned a lot from him, and he's a great person. Jackson Van Uden, he's another great historian. I think you guys would really hit it off really well. He loves learning about new history, and he loves meeting new people. So I would definitely look into him. Shout out to Jackson, amazing person. If you see my other videos with him, he's a well-mannered guy. He's impeccable historian, and like you, Elizabeth, he loves teaching history and loves showing history because that is probably the ultimate goal, is to preserve history and produce content that is both, as I say, the three E's. It educates people, it entertains people, and also enlightens people. The three E's, as I like to call them.
Perfect. I love that.
Thanks. And now we now turn to the business side of being a content creator for history. So for you, Elizabeth, and this goes back to what you mentioned earlier on about trying to fit in with like the TikTok narrative or trying to make your content that was in the TikTok style at the time. So for you, in your opinion, do you think it's beneficial or detrimental for content creators who try to attach onto like a trend or like a thing that's popping up, especially in the historical world? In the case of the Cleopatra documentary that happened a few months ago, Alexander on Netflix, and everyone's been trying to make quick little videos and stuff like that. So, in your opinion, is it beneficial to be a part of that hype train, or does it hurt the content creators' passion because they're not really making passion that they genuinely enjoy? They're just trying to fit in with the hype train, and it's not going to be their best work.
Yeah, I think it's current trending topics, isn't it? And you want to cover
Mm-hmm.
it to get the views to then go on and on and gain more followers and things. Um, but it doesn't, I mean, certain things off the back of if something's huge at the time, I do get it and I do understand it. But my videos and my content are planned out so far in advance
Mm-hmm.
that there's not I don't really do like I've been really strict with the channel that I run to not I don't
Mm.
do trending sounds, I don't do trending anything. It is
Ah,
purely yeah, I've not the I've not done anything like that. It's just I stick with my medieval background music. I stick with my what I want to say, what I want to do. I've done nothing that's been maybe the subject is
right.
current. If a film's coming out with there's a film about Catherine Parr coming out later on this year, so the content around Catherine Parr will then be kind of pushed forward, and so I'll probably then bump up my content on her then. But for trending anything, I don't really tend to lean that way. What I tend to get mainly my not mainly, but a huge amount of inspiration from the followers saying, "Oh, can you do a video about so and so? Can you? I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
Could you delve a bit further in?" Or if someone's asked me, like I've just posted something today, someone asked me, "Where is Anne Boleyn buried?" And I've answered the question directly with a video. And so it's just fulfilling what they'd like to see because after all, it's their channel. It's they want to come back and see me do things. So if they say, "Oh, I'd love to know about that," I will do that because that's what I'm here to engage with and enlighten and look into. If they don't have time, they want to know something about somebody in a 1 minute, 2 minute video that's bite-sized, concise, easy to digest, but then to then further the passion and to be, oh, I'll look into them. Or sometimes I say, oh, Alison Weir's written a great book about this person, so do go and have a look. And people have said, oh, I've ordered it now, it's in my basket. And that is like, oh my God, yes, that is that's
Awesome.
what it's yeah, that's the whole point. That's to get people to want to explore, go find other things, or if they ask me, oh, I don't know about such and such. Oh, I've got a video, 4 videos back. Go and have a look. Oh my God, thanks. It's just so cool when that happens, and it's not all positive. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. I get the inspiration from my followers, and I don't really tend to do trending
All right,
as
all right.
by and large.
Nice. So that kind of answers the next set of questions. So, in your opinion, Elizabeth, would you say that you make your content in a sense that this is something that you wish you've learned growing up, or do you make content for a broad audience from history enthusiasts to those that are really, really hardcore into that specific topic or that field that that topic resides in? And as an add-on to that, how important is it for historical content creators to really know their audience and to do the research into their audience when making their content, whether they want to go a broad audience or a specific audience within the historical community?
Um, I think so you can create a video that you know isn't going to be massive in viewing figures, or a post that's not going to be massive, but you know those 20,000 people that watch it or whatever will then get a little bit of interest in that person to then be interested and then move on and then see this and then see that, and then it kind of goes on and on, and it's like a cyclical thing, and they will
Right.
learn more about it. But it's it's definitely follower. Oh, it's a mixture of both, I think. I wouldn't say
Okay.
it's completely follower led, but it's also my what I would like to have learned, or I wished other
Mm.
people knew, because some of these things are just so interesting and so fascinating. If I've had to delve really deep to find out about it, it's a shame. And I think that that should be more well known. So I will then push content out that about it to in order for it to be more well known, you know, and just and hope that it lands or sticks, or at least with somebody, you know, if somebody
Hmm.
said, "Oh, that's fascinating," and picked up a book about it, then my job is done. To
Awesome.
if anybody wants to learn more, that's all it is, really.
And that is actually really, really true. I think that's like the truest thing for like any starting producing content for like creating these videos. It's ultimately to like encourage people to broaden their horizons, to really open the floodgates, so to speak, of history, and to make people fall in love with history. Because I've had a lot of historians talk about this on the show, which is the biggest thing that can deter people from history is the fact that growing up, we're told dates, names, and places, and that is
Yeah.
drilled into us in elementary school, middle school here in the U.S. or in Europe, primary school, secondary school. That is drilled into us, and that can deter us away from the field of history. But on the off chance it doesn't, we begin to broaden our own horizons and then try to teach history the way that we think it should be taught, not changing it, but making it more accessible to everyone to really understand it and to really get people to enjoy it, which then leads to,
Personal.
yes, personal. That's an excellent word. Which then leads into the next question, Elizabeth. So, looking back at everything you've done up to your point, with your page, with TikTok, and all of your other channels, do you have like an idea of what your viewer is? And did you initially have an idea of what your ideal viewer is in terms of like an average history enthusiast or like a hardcore historian? Did you have that in mind when making your content, or did you not like have an imagined viewer?
Which I really didn't. I didn't have any idea that it would do anything for anyone at all, because I thought, you know, other people are so tired of hearing me whittle on about history, you know, historical things. I was like, well, maybe the wider scope of the world feels the same. They want to
Right.
know why are you making these videos. But when it started to gain traction and people were really interested, um, it was amazing. But it does. I am followed by a couple of historians and curators and things, and that is sensational. It's so unbelievably cool, to have them. You know, if they like a video, you're like, oh my god, it's such like a incredible, you know, star quality, you know, star moment. But and so that gives you a bit of pizzazz and a bit of pep in your step when you think, oh yeah, it's good enough to be liked by or Dr. Owen Emerson. I was just talking to him. He commented on something I'd done, and he was the former chief curator at Hever Castle.
Wow.
And he was just talking about something that I'd said. I was like, oh my God, it's just so cool. Just casually having a chat in the comments. But it's things like that. You think, oh my God, my content better be good if it's being followed by really cool people, like you say, people who you didn't think would be on
Right.
socials and things like he said in the beginning. So I had no idea who my audience would be, just if somebody would like and click with something. But on TikTok now, we're up to like 56,000 followers, which
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you very much. But it's just, I can't believe there's that many people who would care to listen. And but you think, oh yeah, actually, people do want to know. People do want to watch this stuff. So do it. Let's keep
Nice.
going.
Awesome. And in addition to being a content creator, I also, from reading from your bio, that you're also working on a book. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that. What's the topic going to be? And if you want it to be traditionally published in UK or maybe self-published.
It will. It would. Well, I'd love to be properly published. That would be amazing. But I think that's reaching a bit far. But probably it will be self-published. But it's going to be about Anne Boleyn, but not from a regular narrative. It will be from these lesser known people in history and their viewpoints and their feelings toward her
Hmm.
in the trajectory of her lifetime in power. So I thought that was a really cool way to integrate how I run my channel, these not unknown, but lesser known people in this very, very famous historic woman's life. Um, so I'm working on that. I was all guns blazing, but then I had a baby and then it slowed down slightly, but I'm getting back into it now. So
Awesome.
yeah, so hopefully the goal is end of the year, done and dusted, out there in the world. So very exciting.
Well, when that book does come out, hit me up. I would love to read it and showcase it here on the channel.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. And that kind of leads into like the last final questions of the interview, Elizabeth. And this one's a heavy hitter. So brace yourself for this one. So, context for this question. So, a year ago, I had a guest on the show. She was a indie author like myself. And when we were discussing her book, Season of the Dragon, I learned that that was her seventh book, not her first book. And the reason why you say it was her seventh book is because I've written a lot of books before that, but they never really gained the attraction that they wanted. And then she brought up a really important pearl of wisdom, which is a hard pill to swallow, but I think it applies to everyone, his content creators, authors, podcasters, and so forth, which is the biggest lie you could believe is that your debut novel or your newest episode or your debut episode for your channel is start of your legacy in that genre. And she said 9 times out of 10, it does reach the success that you want, that you skyrocket, and which is incredible. But on the off chance, it doesn't get the traction. And that leads into, again, we talked about imposter syndrome. It's like, what am I doing? Am I actually doing this? Am I trying to join this field where other people have researched this topic more than me, have done more research? And she said that it's a very detrimental thing and a very saddened thing for any content creator or any author. But she said it should never deter anybody from their passion if they are passionate about it. So, for you, Elizabeth, in your own opinion, how important is it for content creators, specifically historical content creators, to really understand that their debut episode for whatever their show is going to be about, whatever their topic is going to be about, may not be the one that really gets them the notoriety that they expect, but that shouldn't deter them from pushing it aside and instead should continue making this content because they are passionate about it, because if they don't do it, no one else will.
think if you find it important and you find it of note, that's more than enough. You need to, it takes a lot of balls, but you need, if you find it worthwhile and it is a story worth telling in whatever context and whatever form, history, fiction, non-fiction, then you need to just go in with that. Like, I've enjoyed this process. I've enjoyed the writing, the creating, and that should be should be enough to get you through it, and then move on and do more, gain more, be more successful, and all these other things. But if you find it of note, then somebody will somewhere, or it will come. You just have to keep believing and keep going, and it can be disheartening. Like, even silly things like a post, if it doesn't go down well, or if it doesn't do very well, you think, oh, why is that then? And
Right.
if you thought and felt that about everything, then you wouldn't do you wouldn't create, you wouldn't keep on going, because you can't, you're only as good as your last post. But you have to have the wherewithal to,
Mm-hmm.
it's all right. Yeah, I've enjoyed it, so I enjoyed learning about that. I enjoyed creating it, so let's go, let's do something else.
Awesome. And that's really true. I mean, if you enjoy doing it, if you're like, this is something that I need to do,
Mm.
it's going to show. And you're going to be disciplined to do it. It's going to go beyond motivation because you realize that this is important to you and you need to share, which I think at the end of the day is all that matters. If you enjoy it, if you understand that this is what you're going to do, yes, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of research. It's going to take a lot of stuff. But if you can understand that and accept that, you're going to be fine in the long run.
Yeah, exactly that.
Awesome. And so now leading to like the last few questions, Elizabeth, I'm going to combine these two together. Who would you say have been your biggest supporters in this journey of yours? And have you ever gotten a sense of validation from other historical content creators on TikTok, Instagram, and so forth?
The biggest supporters are, it's my family and friends. They have been sensational. There's so many of my girlfriends have just liked things, said congrats, silly things like that, that it just takes no time, but it means so much when you see them, support that way when they don't necessarily have an interest. That's really lovely for my friends to do that, and to be really championing hard for me to do well, which is really, really moving. It's really, really lovely. But my family are all over it. My husband's very supportive. I've taken him to numerous historical sites that he had no interest in seeing remotely. But he comes, through gritted teeth, or he will be there. That's the whole point. We have a thing going whereby if we visit somewhere historical, we have to go and visit a really lovely pub afterwards, or have a very nice
Ooh,
lunch.
okay.
So that's how we work in tandem. So I get my history hit, and then he's gonna have his like, oh, we haven't been here before, and that's how we work. But my parents are fantastic, and the community on Instagram for historians is so lovely. They're just history creators. Everyone is just really kind, really welcoming. There's not factions and dislike. There's nothing like
Right.
that. It's just pure loveliness, like, oh, great post, or oh, it looks fun there, or silly little things like that. Not silly, but you know what I mean, little things.
Right. Right.
It all adds up, and we all do it for everybody. um and I think that's just really lovely. It's just a really kind space, especially on the internet, where you never know, what people are going to say, or what people are going to do. But it's really lovely. It's not a difficult space to be in at all. It may be difficult in the sense that there is a lot of people, and to make yourself known, I think, is
Right.
is a challenge, but it's a great one to have. But everybody's just really lovely.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad you've had that experience. I'm glad that the community has been very welcoming, very engaging, because it is true. The historians community, on the Instagram, and of course on LinkedIn, where I'm also present on. It's a very, very engaging community because we all want to encourage each other and support each other, which that is important at the end of the day because we all want to help each other, which leads into my favorite question of the interview, Elizabeth. So, what is your word of wisdom to content creators out there who specialize in history? What is your word of wisdom to them?
Find your passion, whether it be for women's history, places, dates, times, battles, whatever it is, whatever you are most passionate about, build your channel from that, because like you've said, if you're passionate, it will come through. If you are merely reciting facts, it shows and it doesn't work. You need to have you need to have you in your posts, in your videos, in your stories. And by having you, it's because you have passion in the subject. If you're merely saying, on this day in 1492, this happened, which I guess can work for some, but it's just, you can get that from anywhere.
Right.
You need to have your little thing, which whatever it may be, and you run with it. And you can diversify, but if you know that is going to be your specialist topic, go with it. Yeah, that's what I would say. So if what you're passionate about, thread that through whatever you do, because it will show if you don't care, and if you're just trying to make content for content's sake.
Perfectly said and beautifully said. And with that, listeners, this concludes the last historians interview episode for the month of April here on the channel. I thank you all for joining me today, and let's give a huge thank you to our guest Elizabeth for coming on to the show and showcasing herself and her content and her passion for history. Welcome to have her to the historical family, as I like to say. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Now, is there any other episodes we should be on the lookout for on TikTok, any posts on Instagram, or anything special we should be on the lookout for?
All of the historic houses are now opening up for the year, so I'm going to be on it. I'm visiting all sorts. So that is going to be what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. Everything is now back open. I'm traveling around the south, visiting all these places, and I'll be creating content all based on where I'm going. So
Awesome.
watch out.
Nice. And where will people find and engage with you on social media? They want to be caught up to date.
It's the History Gal 14 on everything: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, the History Gal 14.
Awesome. I will link all those down below in the description of this video. Thank you all for joining us today. And be on the lookout for my next episode, which is the Historians Lounge episode with my guest, who I will not mention the name. It will be a secret, but you have to wait until tomorrow to see it. So be on lookout for that. And again, a huge thank you to Elizabeth for coming on to the show. Elizabeth, thank you so very much for coming on the show. And hopefully we can have you again in an author's interview to discuss more about your book.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Awesome. And as always, listeners, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below.